All right, welcome, fellas. So this is my dear friend Stuart Gadene. G'day, Gadene.
G'day, mate. How you going?
Good. This is my main. This is my main. This is my brother from another mother. My main man when it comes to all things masculinity. We kind of explore that terrain a lot of the time together and do a lot of work. We facilitate together. If I'm facilitating something, normally I bring Stu in as well, and vice versa. And these conversations are going to be coming at you guys more regularly, and Stu, as I foresee, will be the main co-pilot, and other people will join in. But yeah, it's a conversation about masculinity, and Stu thinks about it in a way which is fucking beautiful and different to me, and which is great. So often when we go for, last time we went for a camping trip, we ended up just sitting in your bus for 2 days straight talking.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, we may as well film this shit. It's interesting, or at least I think so.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
See what the audience likes.
Yeah, so these combos. So today, let's just talk about masculinity. It's straight up, man. We got 40 minutes today. Where do you see the state of masculinity in today's current climate?
That's a really broad question, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an ever evolving sort of thing for me. So, like, I've really noticed lately, doing some like real heavy, tumble dry sort of work on masculinity, or my thoughts on masculinity and what's happening here and what's going on in the world too. And always like testing and adjusting and putting my hypothesis out into the world to see how it actually fits. I have that tendency, for people who haven't met me before, to be like somewhat introverted, which means that thoughts bounce around in my head a lot more than they come out. Yeah, I think like right now I'm feeling this big, almost zeitgeist, if I can use that word, type movement of masculinity on the verge of something, on the verge of a change.
What does zeitgeist mean?
It's kind of like collective think.
Yep.
Yeah. Like a meme in the true sense of the word meme. Like memes obviously become a joke, a little funny picture now. But when that term was first coined, it kind of meant like a group thought that emerges. And zeitgeist is a group thought or movement throughout a culture, a shift generally it's referred to. But yeah, what's going on with femininity, what's going on with masculinity at this point in time, where we sit, and how truly terrifying and tough it can be for me to like at times to feel like what is it to be a man, and what is masculinity, and how does it have a place in the world today?
Yeah.
I don't think I answered anything then, but there's a lot of big words.
I guess we're hitting on the like key. You feel that there's a shift coming. I completely agree. I think the shift is essential and it has to happen. And it has to happen let's talk about what do you think the shift is, and then I'll say when we'll compare notes.
I feel like maybe in a more storybook mythological sort of sense, that there's an awakening and an uncovering going on within men at the moment, to shift from what has been. I mean, you know me, I'm very like mythologically minded, but like there's been this kind of a spell cast over all humans, and we've been playing our part, and women have been playing their part, and now that's changing and bubbling
People
up
waking
into our
up,
society.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think the spell is? Natural next question.
Actually, like I've come across this thought recently that I've been sort of toying with, and it's this kind of idea that I've started to look at I mean, I've always kind of looked at women as mysterious and somewhat dangerous creatures. Very powerful, very, very, very sort of powerful. I mean, my construct of like the universe and how it sits is like, I see men as a more manifest, physical kind of like the embodiment of masculinity being more manifest and physical, and we're able to manipulate the world in a physical sense, in an easier sort of sense, whereas women have that connection to the femininity, which I see as a higher sort of power, and it's more ethereal, and it's a bit, we'd look at it and go chaotic, less ordered, more magical, less sort of physical, and how those two interact and how they connect. And I feel like we've gone through this period of denying what the femininity means to humans, suppressing that in a form, but really suppressing both masculinity and femininity. And now the awakening that I'm feeling is like that awakening to that sort of energy, and going like, okay, there's access to the power there. And there's an appropriateness to the connection between the two.
Totally. When you say you're feeling, as in you feel personally you're feeling that, because you're hitting on a lot of, hitting a chord with me with what you're saying. Do you mean you're personally feeling that?
Yeah. Like I've gone through a pretty tumultuous time in the past year, in relationships, and it's been quite harsh on me, in like dealing with a lot of anger from the feminine.
But anger in you as well, or just from the feminine?
Sorry, angry in me as well.
Like, is there a part of that anger that's from you? Is there a part of that anger in you that's being evoked from the feminine, or being pressed on, this frustration? Because I see there's this huge underlying frustration with men in the world. And then there's this also huge inability to express any sense of anger or frustration. As soon as it comes out, it's you're being aggressive. So, but also there's a lot of heat and anger. I can resonate with the heat and anger feeling that from the feminine, from women. Dangerously say that, but I can resonate with that as well, feeling that. But I also, the more I come into, the more that feminine essence comes through for me. And what I see it as it's receivership. There can't be chaos, there can't be all that energy, all that creation without a lot of stuff coming in. So there has to be open to receiving so it can express. If it was nothing coming in, and I see the masculine as more solid, and the feminine is more like, wow, the chaos, but the chaos has to be receiving a lot for it to be chaotic. And so for me, man, the big transition is this movement into receivership, where stop doing and start receiving. And that's the feeling body, and that's the heart, and that's the coming through. But for dudes, if we go into that, I'm seeing a trend of anger and frustration coming out. And women, I'm seeing a lot of anger and frustration in them as well. So it seems to be this trend. Yeah.
And it's kind of like chicken and the egg in many ways. Like which one's creating which? In many ways in my life, throughout my life, I've felt increasingly muted in my ability to actually express as a man, or how I feel at that time as a man, for many different reasons. And like I've talked to you about this a lot before, but like feeling as I was growing up through the 80s and 90s, that there was kind of like those three appropriate channels for a man to express any feeling, being angry, horny, or hungry.
Totally.
Yeah. So that being like the anger of like any sort of feeling can come out as anger. And my time in the military like taught me that they harnessed that to push everything into that form of anger, and then to harness anger to achieve goals, which is a super powerful thing in of itself, but like not particularly healthy.
It's just, is it useful or not? Coming up with, as you know, being in the coaching and counseling and world, it's like you hear shit that's socially unacceptable, but it's like, well, it's happened. Like, it's just not useful, and it comes out from this base of anger not being able to be tolerated. One of my past relationships really highlighted for me that in the Western world, particularly, anger is really frowned upon, and everyone's really fucking afraid of it. It's like petrified of the heat, the rage, the intensity.
Yeah. And like I've gone through a period of like trying to suppress that as well, like really push that down, and have that deep down in the shadow, and watch it come out in all these sort of like weird sideways sort of forms, and not necessarily as anger either. In fact, for me, not like quite often not as anger. It would be easier if it came out as anger for me. But it just comes out in all sorts of weird, muted ways.
What's your go-to?
Go-to for what?
For it to come out. What's the one that, you know, what's your go-to for it to come out?
Shut down.
Shut down. Numb.
Total shutdown. Like yeah. Not necessarily numb, although that can happen, but like disconnect from the world, disconnect from humans. Something's wrong, something's going, like there's a big emotional thing, and all the support mechanisms that I put into place, I sever, and like you yourself, you're one of my big support mechanisms. You know that when I'm struggling, I usually send you a message. But there's times where I don't do that too.
Yeah,
and
likewise.
Likewise.
I just want to touch on the food, and just if mine, like it's leading to that, but you know, you're talking about food, angry, horny, angry, and hungry. It's like totally right, and I think it's like the main ways in which men express are the ones we have the least education in. It's like either through, like, I just see it as consumption, or like volatile expressions. So like food, just full on consumption, or addiction to, or when we're out at night, just beers and drug, sex and alcohol, rock and roll, and just fuck it away. I tried to do that last night, unsuccessfully.
All three of those things? Or?
No, I don't. Food was my biggest crutch. So like normally now I do a lot better in life if I don't eat very much. But yeah, no, I was just I had this, I've got, with all these big changes coming up and all this step up, this like heaps of like fucking intensity. And I was like, just did the normal thing. I've tried to go and have sex, and just, it was the worst sex. It was just, I was like, fuck no, I'm an idiot. And then afterwards I had the guilt because it wasn't good sex. It wasn't like, it's not like it's good or bad, but it wasn't there, man.
Yeah.
And then the conversation finally came of like, you know, thankfully my partner's just gone, what is up? And then I needed to talk. I actually needed to talk. I needed to be seen in my vulnerability. I needed to clarify that me telling her this didn't make her think I was a little bitch, and like all of that, which it didn't. Amazing. But yeah, just comes out in weird fucking ways.
Yeah, I can totally relate with the sex thing, man. It's like there's so many times where I feel like I've had like some weird group orgy, like I'm only having a sex with the one woman, and it's but I've also brought in that my boss who, you know, was saying some bullshit, and that cunt who cut me off in traffic, he's there as well. And like, you know, the fact that my dog was, you know, not listening to me today. There's all these fucking people in the bed with me, and it's just like, yeah, just not a good situation to be in.
It's gnarly, hey?
But also it's like then, you know, I got to this point where I'm thinking, well, sex is great and fantastic, but that's not the ultimate end point. Like that's just another form of expression in my life. So if it's fucking up with, if like I'm fucking up with making love or whatever, that's just another sign. It was another access for me to actually have that part of my life highlighted, and so that I could see it.
Totally. That's that, like, yeah, that's the tantric background, like different branches of the same tree. So it's like there was, you know, I found it tense and hard to be expressive making love, because I was tense and hard and not expressive throughout the whole fucking day because I had pent it up. And I actually think like this conversation is sort of framed around the state of masculinity at the moment. That's it for me, is pent up and unexpressive and fucking lost.
Yep. Totally. I find like the messages that I feel like I'm receiving a lot of the time are based around what not to do.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people, like apart from people like yourself and other dudes that we kind of like, you know, listen to or read, or, you know, those sort of circles, who are actually standing up and going like, well, what is the right thing to do? You know, we were constantly getting told, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. That's bad. That's bad. This behavior is bad. You're toxic. You're patriarchal. You're white. Whatever the fuck it is. But where are the models of good behavior?
Totally. This is, man, where are the fuck behavior? And where are the elders? Like we're so many generations deep in a bit of a shitstorm that it's like, for me, that the direction needs to be autonomy and group kind of. It's like, you and I get together and we're autonomous, but if I'm way out of line, you tell me, and vice versa, and we check in. And it's when you were heading down a path that like when you were heading down the last year, at the start of the year, it was like, okay, I'm going to have a shit conversation with you. It was like 20 questions that were not nice to ask and probably not nice to answer. That it's that level, like, because who else is there? Like who else do we have as men? It's getting pretty dire.
Yeah. There's no village elders sort of like kicking around, smacking us upside the ear, or like even like having that gentle word. Well, I won't say there isn't any, but they're kind of few and far between. And that connection, the flow of generational information that's passed down from elder man to younger men. It's been severed, like you're saying, for a long time, and there's a lot of grief around that for me, but also I can't sit around and cry about it all the time. It's it's not exactly anyone's fault. There's no one to point fingers at or anything. It's just like, well, now we need to get on with the job of actually figuring out, and fucking it up. And like, I am a great example of that, of how to fuck things up.
Oh, totally,
and
man.
Hopefully learn. Yeah,
totally, man. It's like, I'm a fan. I think it's been my biggest blessing is all the fuck ups I saw. All the fuck ups. It's like insane amount of, but like so much learning, just so much. I don't know. I think that's part of, this. It's like the way I kind of explained it the other day, right? Where men are told how to be, how they need to be, or basically like condemned real hard with how they should be based off how they're not, off a model that doesn't exist. And also that's in some way balanced with also being given all of this like being put on a pedestal because we're men. And then like it's this knife edge, like teetering and totting of fucking no sense of self, heaps of accolades and put forward, and it's like just combustible inside. It's fucking like hot molten. No wonder. It's like, I get it. I get why dudes don't want to be here. I get it. It's like, that makes fuck it. It's really hard.
Yep. Yeah. And heaps of dudes just like, I don't want to say tapping out, but like, kind of almost turning on other guys. It's there's kind of like, it feels like a race to the bottom of who can, hide from that true sense of masculinity because it's so sometimes demonized, and then point the finger at other guys who are, expressing masculinity in a way that feels appropriate for them.
Yeah. What do you reckon the true essence of masculinity looks like? What does it look like for you?
I mean, there are very specific ways that it looks like for me and feels like for me, and I'm fully aware that that's my expression too. But there's a part of it that just is. I mean, this word gets bandied around almost way too much, where it's starting to lose meaning. But authenticity, and it's becoming a bit of a difficult word for me to sort of even say, because so many people are saying it and then not really qualifying it, that word, so much. But authenticity.
What qualify it? What do you reckon? How would you qualify it?
It's that sense of it's showing a level of self-inquiry that you've gone in and actually like dug into things and gone, what makes me me? What in that kind of Taoist sense of like, nature does not try, nature just is. A flower is not trying to be beautiful. A flower just is a flower. It's not striving for beauty. It's just being what it is.
Mm.
And in that, it's being beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And anything is. Yet, like I've often struggled with that concept that I have to be something. I have to, in order for me to feel worthiness in the world, I must earn that. It's not inherent. I'm not inherently worthy to hang around people.
It's so funny, man, that like I think that's the first part of the journey is the hard work, and then the journey comes full. Like what I see is, and what I've experienced is, it's this doing, and it's the kind of the grit, and then breaking through this barrier, and then the flower blooms, and it realizes that it actually has to do nothing. It was it all along, but it was still going through this growing phase and growing pains. It's like because it's like, I don't know. It's like realizing I'm completely insignificant, and that's why it's significant. Like I'm completely insignificant, and that's why I'm significant, because it doesn't matter. So that's why it's significant that I do something with it. It's like it's a mind fuck because it's beyond the mind, and I've experienced that with medicine and vision quests and whatnot. But it's just and authenticity, to come back to that. If I could put it as simply, it would be for someone to walk their talk with an awareness of the ripple that creates for their community.
Yeah. Yep. That's quite poetic. I think the words I would probably use is like the understanding of how fallible and shit we really are as human beings, and that being, like you were saying, that being the most awesome thing. Not the most awesome thing, but like that being perfect. There's a perfection in there of like how whatever it is, broken or wrong or whatever judgment or title you want to put on it, but
how far do you think we are from that at the moment?
Far from being authentic, or far from being perfect?
No, it's like what that feels. It's like, why the fuck are we in the mess that we're in? Like, see, when he explains, like, walk your talk with the awareness of that, or understanding how incredibly shit we are, and how that is what begets beauty. It's like, sounds kind of simple. So then what's going on? Like the state of masculinity is in a metamorphosis, it's in a change. We've had the macho model, and now I feel the feminine model's being miscommunicated, and people understanding that for everyone carrying 20 boxes of tissues with them everywhere they go. And it's like, why are we missing the mark here? We've identified, lack of community mindedness, or community, lack of eldership. And then it's, what else?
Personally, I feel that the lack of understanding, what I've felt within myself, is that lack of understanding of the greater cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That this is all part of a cycle, and that these things happen for a reason. And being like inauthentic, or trying to fit the model of what you assume society or a person or whatever wants from you, or maybe doesn't want from you if you're rebelling against society, which is just the same thing, really. That's actually a really, really important mechanism, I think, for men at a younger age.
The rebelling,
the rebelling / conforming to society's rules and needs. I actually think at a younger age, that men can be we can be dangerous. We do have the power of physical manipulation in the world, and that is like the majority of reality as we know it within our society. So ergo, we control the majority of reality as we know it, or have in up until sort of like recently, where the shift is coming in, I'm feeling. But we're dangerous creatures. Evolutionary forces have kind of built us to be most average sort of men
Mm.
have the ability to be fast and strong and violent.
Mm.
And to put a cap on that, there's a certain amount of manipulation that almost needs to happen to a man at a younger age in order for them to figure out what their place is in society. And then there's a maturation that comes with that.
Mm.
And then you can step out of that cycle and go like, I get it now, and I don't need to be a part of that. And I can actually hold myself, and I know I'm not going to get drunk at a pub and punch someone's head in. I'm more mature.
Yeah, like I've spoken about this with you, and it's like self-knowing, self-control, self-worth, this constant cycle or up cycle when it's done properly at every age and every stage. To kind of, yes, I guess, yeah, I hadn't thought of it in the sense of, I mean, maybe that's one of the benefits of sport. Maybe that's one of the benefits of the military. That's one of, or of that kind of training or mindedness. But then it's like, yeah, but who the dudes running that stuff is like, what? It's like, God, it's so many cycles deep. So like, and it's a mess. But I actually love that it's a mess because there's so much room to play. There's so much room to create something that's sustainable and that's worthy. And for me, that has to be individually owned.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. And like that's the thing. Like, you hit the nail on the head. It's I get the feeling like the mechanisms, like what we do today, we look at it and go like, oh my God, like the military, it's a fucking mess. It's like this, macho bullshit sort of fucking society, boys club sort of thing. And we're looking at echoes of something that we would have done, generationally for hundreds of thousands of years maybe. And it's just more recently, in probably like, the last recorded history that we know, sort of like the last 6,000 to 10,000 years, that we've either gone off the rails, or these systems, like we've forgotten what they're actually about, and the system has started generating itself. Like the tail is wagging the dog now for a lot of things that we're doing. And it's just a matter of going like, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, going, okay, what actually was the purpose of this? Why did I feel as a young man that I had to prove myself? What was that about? Why did I join the army? Why did I, go and do in the army what I did? Why did I go to war? Why did I get into combat? What was driving me to do that? And it was incessant. It was like opposite to everything else that was going in my life, but it was incessant that I did it. It was like I had to try. I had to know. And you yourself, like, what was driving you to get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and row for hours on end and be like this elite athlete that you were just driven to do that? And there's the mechanisms. You can look at it and go, yeah, I wanted like the small mechanisms of environment. I wanted dad's love, or approval, or I wanted women, or I wanted money, or whatever that is. But there's something else beyond that that's actually being exploited. There's a need within young men to have that expression in some form.
I don't know. I mean, I totally agree. And I think for me, actually, it was to hide. So it was to hide. And then again, that begets, well, what's under that is because there's like, I wanted to know who I was, but I was totally afraid to find out. And I think that's where initiation rituals come into power.
Yep. Yeah. That kind of big lost element that we often muse about. That, along with the connection from older to younger men, the key thing about that connection was the initiation process that would inevitably come through that.
Yeah, and that's because I'm not, I don't know if they're unpopular, but I have like different views on initiation to most. It seems around, initiation is something that we give to ourselves. It's not, it can be held and the container can create it, but it's similar to any coaching counseling. Like, we create the container and the person has to step into it. And the analogy being, someone can meditate, 2 hours a day for 18 years and still be a dickhead on the other side of that. Same thing, we can go through. And I think there's an element of that, as you said, the tail wagging the dog. So people are going into this, seeking this kind of, afraid of who they are, so seeking this extreme environment to find out who the fuck they are. but it being the tail wagging the dog, they're coming out, like getting spun off the other end. It's like, fuck, I feel even more lost. Surely I'm meant to have some sense of self from that and some sense of control and worth, but actually I've come out the other end and I feel less knowing about myself. I feel fucking way out of control, and I don't feel good about myself.
Yeah. Well, you mean from an initiation process? They're coming through that and going like,
yeah, like so it's like the military. I see that as that it's potentially as an incredible initiation process for a young man to go through that that system, that learning, that discipline, that like ability to fucking go through those hardships and whatnot. There's this huge draw in me that's drawn to the military. There always has been. It's just the killing bit that gets me of other people. But at a young age, there was definitely a draw there. So I see, and sport, I see these hardships, these things that people are seeking out. I see them as initiations. I see everything as initiation. Every breath can be an initiation if we want it to be.
Yes, I agree with you. Like, initiation is within the individual, and there's an important part of it for me, which is the community. I like, right now in the world, we've got access to like billions of people and their thoughts and their ideas and all sorts of crap. And from an evolutionary standpoint, that's really novel. I would imagine that's really novel. I don't think, we've ever probably had to deal with that as a species before. And so it would have been easy for your community, which is kind of like everyone that you know, to see you disappear, to know that you're going to go through something, to see you come back and see like, hey, he's different because you've gone through that thing yourself, you've initiated, and people can then acknowledge that and say, yes, you have initiated. You have changed and you're at a different level now. We will treat you differently. I actually think that's probably one of the key things that's missing from our society is that we can go through all sorts of shit. You can go, hang in Peru for 3 months and come back and do a whole heap of ayahuasca and wachuma and all sorts of stuff and come back. And I'll be like, hey, like, I've really changed. And your mum's just like, yeah, cool. Well, while you're away, your dad's car broke down and this happened and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, you still need to do your chores and you still need to do this. Like, they will still put you in that same box. The likelihood that somebody will actually appreciate your rite of passage or your initiation in today's society is kind of low. And that's where things spin off. It's like, why aren't I seen? One of the big things, if you look at post-traumatic stress disorder within military people, one of the big factors in it is the community around them when they arrive back. Are they accepting of what they've done? Are they blasé about what they've done? Like in Australia, we're relatively blasé about our military. It's like, it's this sort of thing that some people, a very small amount of the population, go and do, and there's some respect for it from people, but for a lot of people, it's just this big unknown. Whereas if you go to the US, like if I'm in the US and I say, oh yeah, I served in the military, like most people, even if they're left leaning, they're right leaning, they'll say thank you for your service. It's almost like saying bless you to someone who sneezes for them. And so there's this acknowledgement of like in their culture, rightly or wrongly, that you have done something. And that makes a big difference to the individual who goes through that process.
So yeah, I see that.
It's not the be all and end all. There's also like, you as an individual have to hold that yourself.
Well, yeah, that's where I come to with and then the initiation is learning to hold. Like it's almost like today's society's initiations never stop. It's like you don't get the winners, and then it's like, well, now I have to witness myself. Well, there's another fucking initiation, holding this, and I got to go do my 9 to 5 and be normal. But really, and it's like, where's the integration? Where's the reprieve? Where's the support?
Yep.
And I agree, it's a missing piece totally. And I also Yeah, I'm on a chat with a guy tomorrow talking about exactly this, just because I see you don't initiate it into culture, you're initiated into yourself, and then you are more useful to that society, that culture. But the society and what you're saying, I see, is like the society and the culture have to appreciate that. Otherwise, what the fuck's the point?
Yeah.
And it's super discombobulating.
Well, in reality, sitting any sort of plant medicine and coming back, it's almost antithetical to our society, to the proper functioning of a human in our society.
What do you mean antithetical?
Like the opposite of meaning. So it works against our society. Our society is kind of like structured around a set of rules. There's like an unspoken contract that people want to fit in and do these sorts of things. And then you go do plant medicine, you come back and you're like, yeah, fuck this job. And like, I'm going to do this. And people are like, whoa, you're broken now. Like, you're wrecked. Like, this is not good.
Yeah, I literally did a video on this yesterday, man. It's like whose rules are we living by? And a big part of, I think, being a man in the modern world is deciding to live by your own rules and live and die by that sword. So not the big ones that we agree on, like to drive on the left side of the road, sweet. But I mean the internal agreements, the internal live and die by your own rules. Live and die by your own sword and decide what you want to stand for.
Yeah.
Because in a world where you can fucking stand for literally anything, just making a decision, I think, is paramount.
Yeah, totally. The that there is probably one of the key points of authenticity to me, is the internal compass.
Mm-hmm.
Like knowing that north point within you, having your own moral compass, where you make decisions based on what you are, regardless. And again, this is one of the expressions, I guess, of my idea of masculinity, is having that moral compass. So I'll make this decision based on what I believe is, my set of values or whatever it is, not based on extrinsic or external inputs necessarily. Even if it sometimes flies in the face of that. Yeah. So people are like, hey, dude, like, why aren't you going to take this job, man? It's like buku money. You'll be earning big bucks. And I'm like, I don't, like, that's actually not important to me. What's important to me is that I retain sovereignty over myself or something in that situation.
Totally, man. Totally. I agree. And so here's the catch that I'm finding and that I've found for myself, was having that sovereignty. So that internal compass requires a deep, embodied and expansive feeling state. Would you agree?
Yes. Like feeling state as in feeling yourself. An
ability to know how you're feeling, yeah.
Yeah. Which for me has been one of the hardest tasks, and still is today.
This is, I think, in one of Brené Brown's books, she talks about the research showing men have on average 20 words less in their emotional vocabulary than women.
Yep. That doesn't shock me at all.
No, but it paints this beautiful picture for me of, no wonder it's fucking hard to have a moral compass when you can't feel what is true and right for you. Like, no wonder. It's like, yeah, and it's like, fucking no wonder it's hard. It's like, that granted me so much compassion for men and for myself. Is coming into this, oh shit, okay, there's the work, that's the edge right there. And then it comes back into receivership and the feminine and all of these things. It's so crazy.
Yep. Yeah. And the that's a huge thing. The ability to develop that too requires like that reflection, that internal reflection. I felt on my journey. It's like the willingness to actually sit there, not avoid myself. And I do feel like I do have an advantage here, perhaps, in that, like, that kind of very introverted state of mine leads me to be more likely to go and sit by myself and think about shit for a long time by myself, which leads me to actually, like, feel through myself and actually get, what's going on here? Why did I do that? What's whatever it is. but that was a real essential part for me, is actually like sitting with yourself, going through that, not escaping, be willing to do the work. Really, I hate that word. Sorry, but like
no,
in
it
reality,
sums it up, man. Yeah, it's willing to do the work.
Yeah, I'm so willing to like sacrifice my time sometimes for a cause that I find honorable, or for like, oh yeah, I agreed that I'd do this job for this money, so I will do it, and I will like I'll burn my health, and I'll do whatever. If I made a promise to someone, or and it's an important thing, then I'll do whatever it takes to do it. And then so often I wasn't willing to do that for myself. So it's just kind of remembering, like, where if I'm seeking sacrifice, maybe the best sacrifice I can do is actually for myself.
Yeah.
Which is what Odin teaches us. He sacrificed himself to himself.
Oh, beautiful. That's fucking cool. Dude, I got a jet, but you want to do this weekly?
Yeah, man. Definitely. Love to.
Awesome. We'll leave it on sacrificing ourselves to ourselves in a way that supports community and our own individual evolution, not ending it.
Love it.
Big love, bro. Thank you.
All right. Love, mate.
See you, bro. Speak soon.
See ya.
Oh, Han. There you go. All right.